Season 15's been well underway, and it features some of the most ambitious changes the game has seen in a very long time. We got a new epic monster, or if we're being technical, 2 new epic monsters that serve as an intermittent point of sorts between the reptile and Baron. The map also received a new mini objective that both teams fight for at the start of each game, the Feats of Strength, offering an advantage to the team that completes it first, lasting until the end of the game. While the overall map and gameplay adjustments aren't as extensive as some of the things they implemented in the past, 2025 is definitely up there in terms of being one of the most influential, at least in the new decade, more than Mythic items in my opinion. Much of that has to do with how it affects the already tenuous mentality players have from game to game. While changes like the Baron getting new pit formations or Void Grubs being added to the game do matter in the sense that it's something to take into consideration while playing, it doesn't fundamentally impact how you approach the game and the consequences of each individual champion's actions. I mentioned a while back that League needs to stop being conservative when it comes to shaking things up, as I felt like the past few years were marked by the game feeling very much the same compared to the previous decade where League was evolving at a rapid pace every year. But now that a good bit of time has passed and we're understanding what Season 15 entails, I wanted to offer my own personal thoughts on how they executed these changes and what problems accompanied them. For my viewers who no longer play the game but still watch my content, or if you do play and you just don't care to read the patch notes, let's go over the 2 major changes I'll link. First of which being Atakhan, a mid-game boss that spawns either close to top lane or bottom lane depending on where most of the action of the game took place. Unsurprisingly, that means Atakhan will spawn close to bot lane in most games due to there being a higher tendency for bloodshed down there. 2 different types can spawn depending on the amount of damage dealt and the number of kills that took place before 14 minutes. A more combative game will spawn the Ruinous Atakhan, while a more passive game will spawn the Voracious Atakhan. Killing the former will grant the team 25% more bonuses from all epic monsters. That means more movement speed from Cloud Drake, more Void Grub true damage against towers, more reptile damage to towers, more AD and AP from Baron, so on and so forth. Atakhan will also spawn a ton of blood roses on the ground that, upon being collected, grant a fairly big sum of experience and adaptive force. Killing the Voracious Atakhan will cause all future enemy champion takedowns to give 40 more gold to your team, along with a 2.5 minute when used buff where taking fatal damage will not result in death, rather you get instantly revived and sent back to your fountain, with the enemy team only getting 100 gold and 1 stack of blood rose. Now given the nature of solo queue games having no shortage of conflict, 9 times out of 10 we'll get the Ruinous Atakhan, but in pro play where fights aren't as numerous, I can imagine the Voracious Atakhan appearing more frequently. Either way, just like Baron and Dragon, it's of utmost importance to secure this boss. Not only does it give a team a meaningful buff that holds until the game's end, but more importantly, it ensures the enemy team doesn't get it. The second change, and the one I think more people have been vocal about, is the new Feats of Strength mechanic. A team-wide best 2 out of 3 competition where the first team to successfully achieve 2 of the following, getting first blood, destroying the enemy turret, or taking out a total of 3 epic monster objectives, receives an increase to their boots base stats and the privilege to upgrade them into tier 3 boots for a small cost. For example, Swifties has a base of 60 move speed and 25% slow resist. Completing the Feat of Strength gives it 5 more movement speed, and if you upgrade it to Swift March it goes to 70 speed, 25 slow resist, and 4% bonus total move speed. Merc Treads upgrades to Chainless Crushers, granting you a magic damage shield upon taking magic damage. While these upgrades may seem like only a marginal boost to your combat stats, I'll remind you once more that it's not so much getting the upgrades that you have to think about, not entirely, rather stopping the enemy team from getting it. In addition, while essential for the purposes of increasing your tempo, boots are statistically the worst item in your inventory at full build. You'd much rather buy an actual combat item, but most champions cannot ignore movement speed, and so buying a higher tier of boots makes it a more slot efficient item. That should give you a comprehensive look at the 2 focal points of Season 15, and if it wasn't obvious, both of these new systems have multiple things in common. While it makes the game more stimulating in that there are more things to do and play for, the inclusion of Feats of Strength and Atakhan exacerbates the volatility and frustration of League that have progressively deteriorated most players' enjoyment of it, resulting in arguably the most polarizing gameplay experience we have ever seen. One of the biggest pain points of modern League that you no doubt have been made aware of over the past few years is the rampant snowballing and escalation of even the slightest advantage. The meme of GGFF20 at first blood has always been a thing, evidenced by the earliest time you can surrender being originally 20 minutes not 15. That said, it was more of a mentality thing. Hunkering down in the hopes of outscaling the enemy team or patiently waiting for an opportunity to wrest control of the game back in your team's favor was a viable and even optimal win condition at times. But throughout the past decade, gameplay elements were instated that tangibly diminished the feasibility of such an option, punishing teams that choose to play it safe and go for late game, since even if they make it to full build in level 18, The circumstantial advantage provided to the winning side is just so overwhelming that unless you have the dream team of 5 ultra late game teamfight scalers and they have a team of all early game, you're not going to win against the sheer stat difference. It started with the dragon buff being changed from a stacking thing where realistically only the first and last buff were the most impactful to the elemental drakes and then subsequently the soul. Individual drakes have been made practically unnoticeable. You need to get 3 or 4 of the same one to really notice the difference. The soul, however, is a different story. Notably, Mountain, Cloud, Ocean, and Hextech Soul give buffs that present a visible threat to the opposing team. From then on, they went to Rift Herald, an early game objective that when played efficiently can destroy multiple towers in quick succession. Proper Shelly usage can get your team all the way from outer turrets to inhibitors. Having an exposed inhib puts your team at risk of getting backdoored and forces you to play more cautiously. Baron buff was made even stronger as well, giving you substantially higher siege potential by making it far more difficult for the enemy team to clear waves, not to mention how much stronger it makes the enemy team combat-wise. They then added the Elder Dragon Execute. The Elder Dragon used to be an endgame exclusive thing, only spawning after the 35-minute mark, but now, depending on how fast one team gets Dragon Soul, Elder Dragon can spawn as early as 27 minutes. Players generally look to be in agreement that the Elder Dragon serves as the endgame of a match, the ultimate objective where the non-acquiring team was, for all intents and purposes, issued a flee on-site order since their entire team effectively just lost 25% max health each. Even before Season 15, League was in a hyper-snowballing state. On a smaller note, things like First Tower giving more gold, Tower Plates also giving more gold, and Void Grubs making it easy to get Tower Plates enable players to press their lead beyond just the XP and gold they get by scoring a kill. The prevalence of ways to build up a snowball and maintain one can be seen by observing average game times. 10 years ago, it was anywhere between 32 to 35 minutes. Now, the average time hovers anywhere between 28 to 30 minutes, a noticeable drop in time. Though it doesn't state the context of each game apart from surrenders, an educated guess can be made on the primary cause of shorter game times being the plethora of ways to build a permanent lead. 2025 pushes us even further with the release of Atakhan and the new Feats of Strength, adding yet another way for players to build a lead that no amount of effort or strategizing from the other team can make up for. Earlier I kept talking about how the incentive behind securing an objective lies not solely on the benefits you obtain from it, but also on the fact that the enemy team can no longer get it. Back then, for example, the aspect of Dragon was a stacking buff on both sides, meaning even if one team got 5 stacks, the other team could also get 5 stacks if the game went long enough. But when it got changed to Elemental Drakes and then subsequently the Soul, only one team can get it, placing the team that doesn't get it at a perpetual disadvantage for the duration of the game. Atakhan and the Feats of Strength are in the same ballpark. The stats you gain from achieving them are constant and cannot be taken away from the team that gets it. The flowers you pick up on the ground provide you with bonus adaptive force. Killing the Ruinous Atakhan gives you 30 stacks, which I believe amounts to roughly 15 attack damage or 30 ability power, and then you can get even more as time goes on. Then of course we had the extra kill gold you get from Voracious Atakhan and the 25% bonus from Ruinous Atakhan. They might not seem like an immediate benefit right now, but all of these factors in conjunction with other lasting buffs like Dragon Soul can and do add up. Objectives used to be an optional thing you can go for if there's nothing else to do. Now they're the Infinity Stones of League. Anything and everything you do is for the sake of obtaining them. Why lane priority? Because objectives. Why teleport? Because objectives. Why anything? Because objectives. Dragon, Elder Dragon, Baron, Void Grubs, Rift Herald, and now Atakhan. These things are so impactful that like I said, you can be a late game scaling team against a squad of early gamers. But if they have all these objectives, there's just no chance you can win. They have too much kill pressure, too much tower pressure, too much macro pressure, and the losing team has to deal with it for the rest of the game. As well, this applies to the new Feats of Strength. First, I want to point out there is a big misconception going around with the Tier 3 boots. No, they do not give you a 25% increase in win rate. In application, the Tier 3 boots only increase your team's chances of winning by like 2 to 3%. It's something, but not a catastrophic thing to lose. All the same, like I just went over, these small things can add up and make the mid to late game significantly easier or significantly harder. Despite very few adjustments being made to items or champions, this new minigame has completely thrown the champion meta upside down, incentivizing champions with high early game kill pressure and lane priority for the express purpose of assuring your team wins the Feats of Strength. First Blood now more than ever has a lasting impact on your team's chances of winning. Being easily the simplest of the 3 to complete, players have been going out of their way to cheese it. The other 2 criteria, First Tower and First to 3 Epic Monsters, will take more time and effort to do so. Losing First Blood makes it extremely difficult for your team to win since you have to get First Tower as well as 3 Epic Monsters before the opposing team does. And once again, being a permanent objective, you have to contend with the enemy team wearing fancier shoes than you. Beyond statistics, losing Atakhan and Feats of Strength can be just as mentally damaging as it is physical. To repeat, in practice, Tier 3 boots only give you about a 2 to 3% higher win rate. Inconvenient, yes, and in the long run that can make you win or lose anywhere between 5 to 6 more games out of 100. But in the immediate moment, it's not an insurmountable lead. However, it doesn't change the fact that the enemy team has it and you don't. When you also account for the difference being doubled on the basis of the game being zero-sum, it's even more tilting since you not only are at a disadvantage, but you could have had an advantage. At the very least, for a Baron or Elder Dragon, you can stall out the timer and then you're back to an even playing field. No such option for these. You lose them once, you lose them forever. The end result is a game that has increasingly become more coin flippy than it's ever been before. Anyone who can help their jungler get void grubs or any jungler who gets void grubs quickly is a winner. Anyone who benefits from the extra adaptive force or bonus XP gets to their power spike that much faster, which on a side note might be the only reason Syndra got a big boost in win rate despite not getting any changes whatsoever. Access to experience and whatnot has gotten abundantly plentiful. One more issue that I think needs to be highlighted about Season 15. Depending on who you ask, it can either make the game more fun or more stressful, but the existence of both Feats and Atakhan make the game feel overbloated with things to micromanage. The early game matters so much because good and bad decisions cascade into future consequences, raising the stress level of the game and potentially making it overwhelming for players. We're at a point where dying once or twice in lane doesn't just lose you lane, you can also lose your team to tier 3 boots, which can subsequently lose your team Atakhan, which can subsequently make your team less prepared for late game teamfights, especially around Baron and Elder Drake. The pressure to be more proactive has never been higher, yet at the same time, the repercussions of making a mistake have never been more damning. I might just be getting old, no longer being a teenager and all, but anecdotally I find that each game is even more stressful than ever, even when winning. You not only have to obsess over your typical laning phase obligations like farming, beating your opponent, not getting ganked and whatnot, but then you also have to think about so many objectives and so many different obligations. For that matter, from the players I talk to, and again based on my own experience, whenever my team wins the Feat of Strength, it's not reward or gratification I feel, but relief. Relief that I no longer have to worry about the possibility of it getting stolen by the enemy team. Some may find the new early and mid-game objectives exhilarating, but I feel like the game has become oversaturated in things you have to freak out over. On one hand, it's a fresh new thing that changes the game and how we perceive it, but on the other, League is getting to a point where it's power and feature creeping. I find it so annoying when Riot implements things to counteract a certain issue, and then a few months later they exacerbate it, like how they lowered the gold efficiency of items, only then to introduce another way, or rather two ways to inflate your stats back up. Except it's a lot worse, since only one team can get these stats now. As someone who repeatedly told Riot that they need to stop being a bitch and do something more ambitious, I guess I got what I asked for. Season 15 is nothing if not ambitious, but only a few weeks in, and I can't help but wonder if the direction they took was good or bad for the game. The community is presently split down the middle. One half is saying we need to just be patient and get used to the new changes, while the other half is saying League has completely gone off the deep end. And I'm not even talking about the other issues like how terrible the battle pass is, or how they're making champions harder to get for free-to-plays. I'm strictly looking at this from a gameplay perspective. Truthfully, I haven't really played the game that much last year. This year, however, I do feel the urge to want to play again, and objectively speaking, the Feats of Strength and Atakhan do make the game at least more engaging. But whether it's good or bad engagement is where I'm not sure. Playing League has never been more stressful for every role. It's not just jungle or ADC, all roles are exponentially more pressured to not screw up because the consequences can be felt all throughout the rest of the game. Losing first tower, first blood, void grubs, or a single Drake can set you back so far behind for the entire rest of the game. It certainly does keep the game more interactive, but I've never seen more players on edge than I do now. Anyways, what do you guys think about Season 15? Do you think I'm overreacting to it, or do you agree with the current state of the game? Let me know in the comments down below. That's it for today, so if you enjoyed the video, a like and subscribe would be much appreciated. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars and join my Discord server, and check out my other discussion videos if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.